Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far with roster menu absolutely going off behind the scenes right now, going into the Esports World Cup and of course after the World Championship as well, coming up next weekend. Big questions on what the future is going to be, especially for guys like Clayster, released from Carolina. Where is he going to go next? But also talking about praise for Shotzzy, the OpTic player that's been probably the best player over the course of the season and is unlikely to be going anywhere anytime soon. Clayster reveals exactly why he is just such a valuable asset to any team that he's on. Very much enjoyed to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. First of all, Scrappy was obviously on stream over the last couple of days. Not long, of course, until these guys are heading out there to Dallas for the World Championship. So the streams have kind of been on. No scrim streams, obviously, because, you know, it's difficult to get any information really on how these teams are looking. Occasionally before champs, we get some sort of rumors as, okay, this team's looking good in scrims. This team isn't looking so good in scrims. But yeah, we'll see possibly when we go to the event. Often like when the teams arrive at the event, they get their warm-ups or whatever in on like the Wednesday, then you can sometimes get a little bit of information on exactly what is going down. This I thought was pretty interesting actually as well from CDL Stats here. Hardpoint score distribution across the season. So these are the average differential really in hardpoint games. There have only been 10 point clubs, 100 point clubs on the entire season. So a winning margin of 151 or more points is has happened 10 times. The most common one by far, of course, is a score differential of 51 to 100. So something like 250 to 175 is going to be your most common hardpoint score. There's quite a few that have been close, and there have been loads of games that have been within 25 points. Way more games within 25 points. That's actually the most common secondary number, which is kind of interesting, right? That it's more common to have a game that's like 250 to 230 than it is a game that's like 250 to 220, for example, based on the evidence here. But yeah, pretty rare that you get 100 point clubs this season, but this is the most common stuff. Probably a lot of these are from top 4 teams versus non-top 4 teams, although some things kind of changed on that one over the last couple of stages when suddenly these teams at the bottom of the league were actually starting to make some noise, especially when it came to trying to qualify for the World Championship, which of course was one of the big talking points of that Major 4 in Burbank, Los Angeles, California. Let's talk though as well about the situation with Clayster, right? Because he has been released by the Ravens. Where does he go next? That's a big question. He made it clear, as we talked about in yesterday's video, he absolutely wants to still compete, right? Like, it's not his intention to retire. He doesn't want to leave the scene. If he does get forced out in some ways, then, okay, maybe he has to go to the desk, or maybe he has to, you know, maybe become a coach or something, right? I don't know if that's in Clay's future. Maybe he's just going to stream and make content or whatever and kind of try and replicate what Octane has done to some degree. But I think in Octane's case, in years before he retired, he was making content regularly on, you know, YouTube, right? I mean, Modern Warfare 19, Octane really blew up on the YouTube stuff. And as a result, as soon as he did decide to retire, had a pretty big following and audience as well. Now, Clay would have, you know, a good following, a good audience, because he's a big personality in the scene. But maybe, you know, not to quite the extent that Octane has managed over the last couple of years. There's some debate on that. But anyway, Clay will be fine at whatever he decides to do. But he really wants to play. Like, he wants to play this tryout game. He's made that very clear. So these are his cards, and it is interesting to look at the comparison, right? Because I think of all, I mean, look, he played 9 maps or 9 matches on LAN this year, and he played 28 matches online. So that just goes to show how much more important, frankly, online actually is to teams nowadays. Certainly the teams at the bottom of the league that are not going to be making it to, you know, the championship necessarily, as of course they haven't, and are not going to be making it to Championship Sunday. If they're trying to qualify for the World Championship, a lot of what that comes from is just straight up performance online, getting those online points in, and really the online underperformance from Ravens this year was what cost them, right? They were pretty good on LAN. They weren't quite as good as they would have liked to have been, right? They definitely would have had, you know, more opportunities. Ravens, even back at Major 1, right? They probably should have beaten Surge or whatever. That never happened in the end. But overall, Clay was a 91 rated on LAN. I mean, by his role, you look at damage per 10, you look at first blood rate, and some of these other numbers, certainly in control, you know, good objective work, good damage, because he plays at a fast pace. Like, if you look at Clay's best numbers overall and average them out, you find it as a 91. Online, though, he was a 71. So, you know, the numbers are actually really quite different comparing the two of them. especially you look at the search and destroy was quite substantially worse, especially damage per 10 wasn't too dissimilar, but in hardpoint he was just a bit less impactful, slightly less hill time, slightly less damage, slightly less kills. So there's no doubt really that Clay and Fellow especially were better players on LAN than they were online. Gwyn was actually the other way around, right? He was good online, and then on LAN he kind of slowed down a bit, maybe just because, you know, the other guys such as Clay were turning up on LAN. So, you know, this is, what does it show, right? Like, if I'm a CDL team looking at this, am I thinking, yeah, I've got to sign Clay, or am I thinking, actually, online is so important that it's a bit concerning, right? Like, if you're way better on LAN, sure, that's great, but if we're going to be starting in the losers bracket on LAN, then obviously it ain't ideal, is it? So that's the problem that these teams will have to look at, is that, yes, Clay is a good LAN player, and therefore that's worth considering, but if you're a lower tier team, you play far more games online than you do on LAN, at least on the current format. If next year's a different format, then hopefully it could be a very different story. And also it's worth considering as well that on LAN, the teams that he played potentially were worse just because they're often starting in losers. Although if you look at the data, that's actually not really true. These are the teams that Clay played on those series, those 9 series. 2 against New York, 2 against Surge, 1 against OpTic, 1 against Ultra, and then Guerrillas Miami Vegas. So, okay, theoretically those easier games, and Surge were up and down, but on average those are pretty good games to play theoretically, right? So I think that, you know, on the whole, it's impressive what Clay did on LAN this season, and as Clay goes on to say, let's bring the LAN league back, right? I think this is the key point. If next season's format is somewhat different, when online is less integral or whatever, then Clay will, I'm sure, be happier about it. But then again, if Clay enjoys the game more, because Clay is kind of built for a LAN environment, right, really, whereas online COD, it ain't Clay's forte, and especially on a game that he doesn't necessarily enjoy so much. But if he's loving Black Ops 6 and having a good time, then I do think his online performance probably gets better anyway. But Twitter your thoughts in the comments section below. But let's talk about Shotzzy, right? Because, of course, Clay and Shotzzy got their chance to team together a few years ago. They, of course, won the World Championship together as well. There was also further talk about this Valorant stuff the other day because, you know, we saw Dashy and Shotzzy were having a good time, but obviously, like, you know, HyDra, Skyz, I'm pretty sure they were on the other team as well. Shotzzy's movement here, kind of nice, by the way, on the Raze, but still gets absolutely clapped here by the Jet. But let's talk about this Clayster clip, because, again, in this Golf for Friends stream that he did, he was talking about his time teaming with Shotzzy, right? Obviously, they were together on that Dallas Empire team during the Modern Warfare 19 season, and they ended up winning the World Championship together that year. That was Shotzzy's first year in the CDL, and, you know, there were big questions even at the time when, of course, Nameless had that famous clip that he said on the, like, trading point show, whatever they used to call it anyway, when they would give a take, and Nameless had to, like, defend the point that Shotzzy was botsy, right, that he hadn't done so well. And it was kind of maybe not a massively similar discussion, but kind of like with Snoopy this year, when, sure, clearly a talented player, but there was some debate even with, you know, Shotzzy absolutely at the time as to whether he was going to be good enough to actually get the job done when it came, you know, was he smart enough as a player, right? Was he going to be able to learn quickly enough as some of these other guys? But already at that point, you got to understand, Shotzzy was the 2018 Halo 5 champion of the world, right? Because he'd won that with the Splice team. So it was quite clear that Shotzzy was going to be an absolute top tier player. It was just a matter of time, but it did take some great leadership and advice from the guys around him, right? And that's kind of what Clay gets at, is that during that season, Clay and obviously Crim6 as well, who were the veterans on the team, alongside Illy, alongside Hook was the rest of that 5 versus 5 roster in MW19, were giving him advice, and Shotzzy was just soaking it all up.
I'm stuck up here. One's on bomb though. I'm stuck up here.
Watch out. Fine, this guy. One's on me. Hit the bus.
Heard you. I'm baiting you at.
Yo, the bus.
On the bus, dead.
Nice.
Take it at me.
Heard you come.
Yeah, email.
Take it.
Emails. What is
I take the last guy.
Ran out the spawn.
Why are you reading that, team? It was close, right?
Where?
What the fuck?
Shacked or some shit. Barrel corner. He's
Barrel.
under the ladder, running at you.
Yo,
Ran out getting input for you.
What was it like team with Shotzzy? His first pro year in COD? Fantastic kid. An absolute sponge. Listened to every single thing we said to him. And we won champs that year. Miss my boy Ant. For real. I do miss my boy Ant. Damn, he hit me with a fat 2,400 viewer raid. Cum shots raid?
Birdie, baby.
Jesus.
They talking about, bro.
I do miss my boy Ant. Him and I haven't spoken much since our champs win. But I like him. I like his girl a lot. Super good vibes from him, man. What a good dude. Appreciate the sub, bro. Or not the sub. Appreciate the raid. Damn. I had a couple too many IPAs.
So I think this goes to show why Shotzzy is considered to be such an important asset for like every team that he's been on. And of course that remains true, I'm sure, for OpTic Texas to this present day. That, you know, a smarter player, I think, that people give him credit for. This is also a talking point that I think Formal had, where he pretty much said, yeah, this Shotzzy guy, he's obviously talented, he's good movement, you know, shoots straight. Okay, maybe he goes over the top sometimes in some of his plays, but I think you're going to get that naturally when you've got a player this talented. Like, you've got to allow them to fly sometimes. That's just how it's going to be. But also worth noting that Shotzzy's a smarter player, I think, than people tend to give him credit for. A lot of players have said that in the past, and maybe in the early days that wasn't so true, right? Like at the start of Modern Warfare 19, Shotzzy did seem lost on the map, but the Clayster, the Crimsix advice, and Shotzzy is in some sense maybe got better every single year. He actually ended up the MVP of the regular season back in 2020 for the MW19 season, but even since then, in some ways, he's got better every year, and this year he's probably the best player on this OpTic Texas roster. What does that mean, though, for the future? It probably means that OpTic are going to get rid of this guy again anytime soon. Shotzzy will have the keys, I think, to this team for a long time to come if he wants to stay, and I guess that is part of the debate really here with Shotzzy as to whether, if OpTic failed to deliver again at this year's World Championship, yes, he won an event a couple of months ago back in Toronto, but does it guarantee that he's going to stay with OpTic forever? I guess that is a bit of a debate at the moment. So tweet your thoughts and all that in the comment section below. A few interesting things to mention for you guys as well. This is going to be Simp's 6th Call of Duty Championship, and he has the highest average placement in the history of the event. It's pretty absurd, right, that his average placing is 1.8. So, you know, he's had mostly a couple of firsts, couple of seconds, and then a third. So anything but a win reduces his average placement and makes it worse. And these are the numbers of all the players in this position, right? So Simp is averaging a 1.8. So this is after their 5th appearance all time. JCap, after his 5th Champs appearance, had an average placing of a 2.4, which is also very impressive. Kenny, you know, anything around about like a 4 is really good. And difficult to see enable here in some ways because every other player on this list has won it, right? Kenny's now won it. Attach won it back in 2015. Crim won it 3 times. Scump won it once in 2017. Cellium's only won it once so far, but that might change this year. Slasher once in 2016. aBeZy twice, of course, in 2016 and 2018. But Enable, after his first 5 Champs appearances, averaged a 4.2 placing, but never quite got over the line, right? I mean, there were a couple of chances. Black Ops 4, World War 2, both of those seasons was in the final and couldn't quite get over the line, unfortunately, for the nub. And just one final thing, every player that's made it to back-to-back Champs Grand Finals is as follows. So Karma, Rambo, Cap, Slasher, John, aBeZy, Kenny, Enable. So again, most of these guys, like with the exception of Rambo, you know, he didn't win the World Championship. Most of these other guys did. Enable hasn't, Priestahh hasn't, and all of these other guys have. So, you know, those are your guys who made back-to-back Champs Grand Finals, and unfortunately for a couple of these guys, they lost on both occasions. But these are the only guys that have won on back-to-back occasions. That's Karma 2013, 2014, JCap back-to-back, and then Clayster back-to-back. So, of course, this year, HyDra, Kiz, and Skyz, if they make the finals, they join this list, and if they win, then they join a very exclusive list of players indeed. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.